Absolutely. So yeah, there we go. So the recording's on now, just in case anyone needs to know that, right? So where are we? We're in the Aligned Programme Execs roundtable, and we're talking today about inspirational leadership. And yeah, we're reflecting on what's the current landscape, what's it like to be in this world of work right now when we're involved in bringing strategy to life. So yeah, Simon, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to kind of come at this from two particular things I'm seeing at the moment. One is the change managers, and the other is the stakeholders. So really the people that are usually impacted directly by the change. The change managers I'm seeing at the moment are so you get a lot of short-term people coming in quickly, having to kind of hit the ground running. And what I'm seeing, as well as kind of project and program skill, what I'm seeing is the quality of delivery tends to be dependent on the business knowledge of the people. So whereas the idea that you can work on building an aeroplane when you don't know what an aeroplane looks like, I think is false. And we're really dependent on people who understand the anatomy of the business, and often that's missing. So that's one thing that I'm seeing a lot of. So we're putting, where I'm working at State Street at the moment, it's I put a lot of effort into really coaching guys on exactly what this bit of the business does and how it operates, right? So that's the first thing. I think the second thing, stakeholders. I'm sure this is true across the board. Stakeholders that are not used to participating in fast-paced change, they move slowly and they don't know the rules, and just capacity. And I think that's probably the nub we're hitting at the moment is capacity. You've got 5 different projects hitting the same staff. No real, although they like to say they do it, no real prioritization going on at the senior level. So it's just a jumbled mess of. So I think those are the 2 big things I'm seeing at the moment. They sounds like just being grouchy, but I think they're both things that can be addressed.
Yeah, I agree. They can be addressed. Obviously not easy things to address, right? But it sounds like, like I said, I've been doing a lot of thinking about this space. And for me, I land on the word alignment. It's about aligning the right people into the right roles. It's part of what you've just said, right? Having the expertise and understanding the business. But another part of that is aligning priorities, understanding the strategy, getting all the different people to line up, getting all the teams to line up. That can be quite a feat, right? So yeah, that can drive a lot of that unpredictability.
And what we're seeing at the moment is the senior managers they've got a role to play. Their pillars of these organizations, but we're finding they need to be much more actively involved in cascading messages down and unblocking stuff. So it's like they're having to roll their sleeves up, but periodically, not all the time, to help with these projects. I think that's that's what we're finding at the moment. We're having to kind of do more of that.
I think as well, just adding to that, I find that it's a lack of, and I think this is at a senior level, it's a lack of single accountability for it. So when we talk about we're going to deliver a thing, it's never one person that's delivering the thing. There is a myriad of stakeholders in all sorts of parts of the organization, and what you're actually then bringing to the table is multiple strategies, multiple personal objectives, and they all compete with each other. And actually a lot of the treacle that we have to try and sort of crawl through to get things done is about trying to manage strategy A from this function versus strategy B from this function. And guess what? Those 2 things aren't trying to swim in the same direction. What happens inevitably is that challenge or that mitigation gets pushed down through the organization, and you have quite junior teams and junior project managers trying to manage demand A and demand B because everyone's just shouting yes. And that can be, that contributes to a huge amount of waste in our system, in our network. And that's actually, for me, the biggest thing we've got to try and get through, because as a leadership group, how do you clear that up? And in matrix organizations, that is really hard to do. And we need to recognize that to deliver a thing to the client actually involves multiple different functions, multiple different teams. And actually the thing we've got to get is alignment through. And I think you just hit the nail on the head there, Simon, with the alignment word, is alignment through that. And that is really hard to do.
What we're finding is that often it's the business, the people whose P&L is impacted, are the ones that care most, and they're the ones that step in. So often it's driven through the client.
But the business, the different stakeholders at that group are measured on different things, right? And I can see Brian, we've got Brian on the call. If you recall from not that long ago when you were at the table there, we've got half of our sort of exco and senior stakeholders are measured on ability to bring revenue in, half of them are measured on the ability to cut cost. Right, those 2 things actually butt heads against each other when you're trying to get things done. Wouldn't it be great if everyone was measured on profitability? Both of those things.
You know what's interesting for me as well? So I know the context that you're describing, of course.
Yes.
I really do feel it. But I see it in other organizations. So over the last few years, operating in other places, in other sectors, in fact, it's a really common problem that we have strategies. And even if you think about the way that an exco or a leadership team at the top of an organization is actually set up, the functions are in fact designed to create some conflict, right? So what I'm gonna be bringing with this whole conversation and this program is, well, what can we do at a personal level, right? So there are things that concern us and might actually be quite stressful and challenging to deal with. And then there are things that we can actually influence. And as leaders and as people showing up to groups of people and teams of people, how you show up can have a massive effect, right? And I know a lot of you here are experienced at how you do that, and you're intentional about how you do that. And that's, I think, what the conversation here is going to be about, is in fact, how do I show up in the best possible way that I can? And that's what I mean by the aligned program exec. That's what I mean by inspirational leadership. So there's a few more concepts that I'm gonna introduce with the work that I've been doing around emotional intelligence and coaching and resilience. That's sort of the underpinning for a lot of these concepts, and hopefully there'll be some useful thoughts for you guys here. So if that's our landscape and that's how it can feel, there's some stuff that we can do. There's a shift. And I do believe that some of these things that we can have agency over and do on an individual basis, and recognizing that the leader's voice is loud in a group, and therefore we can create a ripple effect and we can bring a positive impact. And so you can move things away from unpredictable delivery towards a more confident delivery. And I've seen people here doing that, actually. So, you know, I know that to be true, and I know that to be true in other contexts as well. You can move from that sense of lonely, no one seems to get it, why can't they see what I can see as the desired future, how things could be, to get to much more of a sense of being connected, which is, of course, you know, not easy, but it's something that's really important to a human being. And then you've got that sense of stress, and actually, how can I focus? Focus is a skill, focus is a practice that we can learn for ourselves, and again, for how we show up with our team. So there's ways to show up that can make you be memorable and make you be creative in how you impact on how the work is done in the collective, in the group. So that's what this whole framework is going to be about. So there's a whole framework here. That's the sort of the journey that I'm going to be talking about. But in particular, today, let's talk about Inspire. Inspire under the Align phase, inspirational leadership. What does that mean? How do you do it? What are some techniques that you could use? So the first way to think about it is, again, it'd be great to get your comments here. What does it even mean? What does it mean to inspire or to be an inspirational leader? What does it mean to you guys?
You have to be able to motivate those who you are hoping to mobilize to follow you on the journey that you're setting out, whatever that journey might be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And to give them a sense of faith and belief that it's achievable.
Yeah, I think that faith is a good word at that point.
Mm. It comes a bit with trust as well, doesn't it?
You took the words out of my mouth there, Simon. I think when you talk about leadership, you talk about fellowship and inspiration, right? And for that, you need that foundational trust, respect, listening skills, that, you know, open to challenge, that selflessness. I think those foundational pieces are absolutely key for any inspirational approach, because otherwise it's just hot air. It's just words. You believe it. Is it just noise?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the thing, that level of actually moving people But if you break trust, it's really hard to regain it, isn't it? Yeah, I
think part of being inspirational is also helping to unblock things. So when someone comes to you, and that also goes in developing trust, you know, if there's a block and they come to you with that, you know, you actually make an honest effort to understand it and do something about it. And, you know, yes. I think that's where you win that respect as well, so that they know that they can, you know, come to you in future. Yes. Otherwise, you know, I think someone said hot air, this is probably what it'll be. And, you know, that trust won't be developed.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
I do love that. I love that comment. And I think it's really, really important that you practice what you preach, right? If you say you're going to help, then when an opportunity comes up and you do, people go, okay, it's not just talk. They're in this with us. They're part in the trenches. They're going to help us take this forward. I think that is so important.
Yeah. Yeah, very much. So I looked up the dictionary definition of the word inspire, and I really liked, actually, the one that I found has two versions, two definitions, right? One of them is about filling someone with the urge or ability to do or feel something. So as Kev said, it's, you know, motivating them. I think there's something about moving them is a word that I think of when I think about this. But the other one is interesting, and I hope you guys are feeling a little bit sort of free and creative today with me as well. I'm going to get you to do a little bit of breathing in a minute as well. Hope you're doing it already, of course. But in terms of inspire, literally means to breathe in, to fill with oxygen, right? So imagine that you've got, I've had this conversation before, a project in trouble, and the phrase that someone used was, we need to fill them with oxygen. So I really liked that. So do you guys think that you can learn it? Do you think that inspirational leadership is something that you've either just got or you haven't got, or do you believe that it can be learned? What do you think?
I think there are behaviours which, and we've talked about some of these, which can support inspirational leadership, but a lot of it is, I think, personality. You know, there are people that get up and inspire just by the way that they are. Mm-hmm. But then as we've talked about, when that inspiration then turns into drive and actually delivery, then a lot of it is about sort of techniques, and there's things that you can do that reinforce that inspiration. So how do you trust? How do you follow through with your teams? How do you make sure you're there when the problems exist? So to Brian's point, how do you demonstrate you're in the trenches? I think you can learn that to a degree, but there's I think there is an inherent personality that make people easier to follow. Yeah,
I think there's truth in that, and there's also truth in there's not just one way to lead as well. So right, and I'm going to share something on that in a slide or two, actually. And I would also offer that actually when we think about the research on behavior and on competency in leadership, and in particular if you think about emotional competencies and social competencies from the world of emotional intelligence, the research is pretty compelling, actually, that while we do have those personality traits, we do have very deep motivational drivers, actually, as well, which influence how we come to work. And those attributes, those physical attributes and personal attributes that will impact how we show up, there are competencies that we can learn. So the next thing, so there's a couple of pages here about, okay, what are the things that inspire us? Yeah, so I'd be really interested to hear from you guys on people that you found inspiring. I've got 2 pages of this. It's one is about people and one is about ideas. So for me, these are some people that I found to be inspiring. So the top left picture is Toto Wolff and Gareth Southgate, when both of their teams in their respective sports were doing really well. So who do we admire? Sometimes it can be a political leader, it can be something to do with sport, it can be something to do with the arts, it could be all sorts of things, or it could be, you know, business, of course, as well. The one on the bottom middle there is Daniel Goleman, who popularized the idea of emotional intelligence, and you know, if you haven't, I'm sure you've heard that phrase, but what's the revelation of that? At the time, it was actually the late 90s when he published that. It was a big it was a big revelation for people that IQ isn't the most important thing when it comes to being a successful leader. There are emotional competencies as well. So that's been something that's been a big influence for me. If you look on the right-hand side, all of the images there, the circles are based on an assessment that I use to help us understand our deep motivational drivers. It's called a game changer index. And so the point being, they're all different colors because everyone shows up in different ways, but can be a highly effective leader, right? So there's different ways to do that. So what would you guys say if I just pause there? You know, who are some people that inspire you in your thinking?
For me, I think it was Indra Nuri. I guess I was inspired by her because she's a mum too, and she talks a lot about work-life balance. One of the phrases she used was extended parenting, which is basically, you know, you don't have to do everything yourself. You know, if you need help and, you know, you involve others like the grandparents, she calls that as extended parenting, and that will help. So I think that helped me to reflect a lot on work-life balance.
Yeah, that's powerful stuff, actually. Yeah. Because you're juggling so many things in so many different contexts, right? You've got work and you've got family and you've got extended family and all of that. Yeah, that can be a lot. Yeah.
I can give you two completely different sources of inspiration, one inside work, one outside work. So inside work, somebody that a few of you will know, Richard Herbert. So he absolutely, in my professional life, was an inspiration for several decades, as a kind of a sincere, professional, competent, diligent, incredibly dedicated and hardworking manager in the various roles that he had in the city and technology in various institutions. So that was one form of inspiration for me. And completely different form of inspiration, David Bowie. The inspiration there just being that he was prepared to do things and be different. And prove that you could be successful without having to be like everybody else. So it was okay to be successful your way, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
I have to apologise, by the way, that in 5 minutes I'm going to have to drop off because I've got a 12:30 meeting I have to get to.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I've run on a bit actually longer. So, but no worries. Yeah. So that's one way of thinking about what is it that inspires us. And actually there's a practice I want to take us to in a couple of minutes, which is all about this. It's all about thinking and finding those sources of inspiration in people, right? And then actually when I've done this exercise with people often think about family members, which is interesting as well. You know, they find inspiration from a grandparent or from a parent or some other family member as well. And so then ideas, right? So we all hear, you know, lots of big ideas in the world. And here's just a few examples of things that I find to be inspiring, right? So I guess the point is obvious there, right? That you're going to have even when it's people that inspire you, there's something they're doing that represents an idea or a way of being that is going to help you to feel inspired. Yeah. So the one in the middle is the game changer index, which is also, as I mentioned earlier, it is an idea that I find to be really, really useful and powerful. Stubborn optimism is used by a group of campaigners for sustainability, and it's an amazing phrase because things are challenging, things are hard, but there's an ability for me to persist. So it's a really, really powerful idea. Yeah. So let's go to how do we do something here with all of these ideas, all of this ability, I believe, for us to do things, to be able to show up and be inspiring. It starts with us internally becoming into a state of being inspired, right? So one thing, and you will have your own ways of doing this that you might lean on when things are challenging and when you need to have an impact. You might be doing something that gets you into a place of feeling inspired. But here's an idea, here's a practice. If you try this for just 5 or 10 minutes for the next 7 days, see what happens. You might be surprised with some of the things that come. So the question is going to be, we're talking about inspiring people. So it's just a thing here on, heroes. Who are your heroes? Start thinking about that question, and let's just spend the next few minutes, and that'll be the last thing we do today as well. So then I will see what more comments there are, and hopefully you'll have a good experience from trying this out. So think about your heroes, and like I say, it could be all sorts of contexts that they come from. And what I'm going to ask you to do is, if you're able to actually stand up for this, it would be even better. So there's a little bit of science under this breathing technique thing. Basically, chest breath or mouth breathing is in fact anxious breathing. When we feel stressed and anxious or distracted, we can find that kind of breath without even realizing it. So this is a very simple technique. Let's just do 3 breaths where you breathe only with your nose, in with your nose and out through your nose, but it's not like a yoga noisy breath. It's not that, it's just a very smooth and quiet breath. So we want to breathe in for 6 seconds. You want to hold at the top for 7 seconds, and then breathing out for 7. So 6, 2, and 7. So I'm just going to go quiet for a little while to let you give that a go. So I've managed 2 rounds there, but for the sake of keeping us going, I'd be curious to know how that went for you guys, if you did it, and what that feels like. Does anyone have something they want to share before I do the next bit?
It centers you, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah. And
yeah.
There's a lot of research, as you mentioned, around the benefits of stabilizing using breathing techniques.
Yes. And so my point with this one, in fact, yeah, it's a great point, Sarge. Yeah, my intention with offering this one is actually, it's so simple, right? And if you actually did 4 of these breaths, you've just done a minute of meditation. And there's many benefits of that, right? But this conversation isn't really about meditation as such, but it's just to get us into a place. The next question, the next bit, right, is the practice itself. Let's think about those heroes. When I've done this with project teams and other groups, people have, like I said, they've thought about a family member that they've really been impacted by or that inspires them, or they've thought about a sporting person or a sporting personality or a business leader or a political, whatever it might be. It's your own idiosyncratic answer on who are those people. So hopefully you've had a moment to kind of begin to think about who those might be for you. And once you get yourself into that place, when you've done a little bit of breathing, it's just spending a couple of minutes thinking about, well, if I was to have a conversation with, if I was sitting with Daniel Goleman again and had the opportunity to talk to him, what might he say? What would he offer? Or if it was, Gandhi is another one of mine. So just have a go at doing that and think about, if these people were able to come and sit with you, what qualities do you admire in them? And the interesting thing to recognize is that we're drawn to something that we see in ourselves. And so very often when we think about these inspiring figures or these heroes, there's actually something within you that you're tapping into. So what are those qualities? And then you can start to think about, well, how do I do more of that? How do I show up in that way? Is then the next step, right? But if they had some advice for you, what would it be? So that's the very simple practice. And, this can be, this can evoke stuff, actually. Can be sometimes emotional. It can be sometimes lifting. And all of those things. So I'm going to stop sharing. And that's what I wanted to offer today. So hopefully that's been interesting. Does anyone have anything to reflect on having done that practice together just now?
It's just made me think, actually, who are my heroes, and try to search my brain for that, because it's not something I've ever really honed in on before. And I think that asking them for their guidance, I think, is because that's going to bounce back your own personal values, I think, because your heroes will reflect your personal values, and therefore it helps you reinforce those. So I think that's quite a neat and cute little exercise like that.
Yeah, it can be really powerful. Yeah. What more? Smrita, I can see you're shaking your head. What are you thinking?
Now, I was just reflecting on that sentence you said, when you said, when you see these inspirational people, what are their qualities in them that, resonates with you? So, I think one thing I've been trying to do is, like, when I am at work and I see someone, who's sort of inspired me for whatever reason, whether they speak well or they've described something in a way that I understand, I think I kind of take notes and see, if it's like, oh, I like that, I'd like to, use that. So that's something I'm trying to follow. So, to put it into practice. So you can pick up a lot, like when you see people. So even within work, or as you said, outside, TV, whoever it is. So I think I'm like maintaining a book where I write down these things, and then it's nice to go back and check
nice,
that.
Yeah, it's a really great practice, actually. Yeah, writing it down, journaling, and having it to look back on, right? Yeah, and it can really help your thinking. Yeah, there's also something about empathy in what you've just said, I think, as well, right? So we need to recognize that even if we think we're showing up totally poker face and neutral, and our team can just get on with the work, but we've got other things to do, whatever that might be, or in fact we've got to deliver a difficult message and we're trying to hold the emotion in and down, but people know, right? Because we have mirror neurons. These are proven from, actually animals as well as humans have these neurons in your brain where we're actually really tuning into each other, and the emotion that you're expressing and showing up with, even if you're not saying it, I will feel it. So there's something about that in what you've said as well. Yeah, awesome. So that is the presentation stuff for today. I hope that that's been interesting and maybe some inspiring thoughts from what we talked about today as well. So any final comments from anyone before we wrap up?
I'm still pressing and breathing.
Thank you. Are we meeting then, Simon? When you asked us to reflect on this every day for like next 7 days, 5-10 minutes. Do you want to see how we're?
I would love to hear. Yeah, definitely, because I do this in practice with coaching clients a lot, and it's always interesting to see where people go with it, and everyone's different. It's fascinating stuff, actually. Yeah, I would love to hear that. I'm going to be running these sessions every week. I'm then going to be setting up the ability for people to book a one-to-one call as well, actually. So that's another way of connecting. But I'm going to run this kind of thing every week. I'm going to bring something on. Maybe I could ask you guys a quick voting, actually, on a couple of topics I've got in mind for the next couple. But let me hold that. I see, Chris, you came off mute. Did you want to say something?
No.
Okay, good.
No, I think
just
checking. Simon, I think that's a good idea, because I think we've all got sort of experience and anecdotes and little techniques and things that we've all used over the years. So if you come up with a topic around that, I'm sure between us all we've got some really interesting little things we can say that we can all learn from each other from. So because we all do things slightly differently and look at things from a slightly different perspective.
Yeah, and I've already learned from people I've worked with, including yourself and others here, right? So that's also part of
and vice versa.
Good, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you, very, very kind. So so 2 topics I'm thinking about deeply, which will be on the agenda, right? So one of them is about knowing yourself. So again, the ability to show up powerfully in your work, to really have an impact with other people. A lot of that does rest upon a foundation of knowing yourself, right? And it sounds very wacky, but there's some very specific things that we can do. Go ahead and thank you. And then the other one is conflict. The other one is when we do projects and change and all this stuff that we do, and just when we work together in teams, we get into conflict. So there's a whole model of how you can do that skillfully. So that's the other one that I'm going to be bringing. Is there any sort of views from the group right now on which of those two, if I just kept it really simple, would be the first one that you're interested in?
Conflict for me.
Yeah.
That's always a difficult one, and I think you can never really master it, because at different points of your career you'll have different kinds of stakeholders, so there's different kinds of conflicts. So I think that's for me an ongoing one that I think I always have to.
Absolutely. Yeah, I recognize it too. That's really useful. Thank you. Yeah. Anyone else?
I think both of those are good topics. So I'm sure we'll get to both of them. So
yeah, we will. Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, guys, for showing up. This is really a new experience for me, and I'm having fun. We're at the learning edge, so wicked. Thank you. Have a wonderful Wednesday. All right, I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Sam.
Go do your breathing and lie down. Do some savasana or something.
I'll do some breathing. Thank you. Take care.
See you later. Cheers and
Bye-bye.
bye.
Thanks, Simon.